Guys, as we continue to talk about marriage and taking care of our marriage, I want to start a new series where we actually talk with couples. I'm calling it Conversations with Couples. And today we're going to have a conversation with Bill and Cindy Mason. Bill and Cindy have been in our church for some time now, and we're just going to learn a little bit about them, learn a little bit about their marriage, things that they've learned, and hopefully by listening to their testimony, listening to this interview, you'll learn some things and you'll get some good ideas about what you can apply into your marriage. Now, I want to say this, Bill and Cindy, they have a great marriage, but it's not perfect, just like all of us. We have good marriages, but we're not perfect. But I think it's good that we can all come together and learn from one another. So enjoy the conversation with Bill and Cindy. Now, the video quality is a little bit off, and that's more on my end. It wasn't on their end, but the sound is great. So it might get a little wonky there where their voice isn't matching up with what you see, but that's okay. It all comes through, and they do a great job of really sharing from the heart, and I'm excited that you'll get to watch this. So take a look.
Well, hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. As you know, we do a lot of stuff dealing with marriage here at FBC Allen, and kind of the thing I've been talking about this whole quarantine is take care of your marriage. And so what I wanted to start doing with the new series is kind of interviewing couples that are a part of our church. And these are great couples. They have what appears to be great marriages, and I know they love the Lord. They love each other. And so we're going to start off with the Masons today. And so we have Bill and Cindy Mason joining us today. Hey, guys. How are y'all?
Hey.
Good. And thanks for going first. And I know it's a little bit of a surprise for you, but I want to go ahead and spring that on you that you'll be first. And so you guys get to set the bar really, really high, okay?
We'll give it a shot. We'll see how it goes.
Okay, well, good. Well, hey, if you would just take just a couple of seconds to just kind of introduce yourselves, tell us about how long you guys have been married, tell us about your kids, what you guys do for a living, all that kind of good stuff, and just introduce yourselves for those that don't know you.
You want to go?
Okay. Well, I'm Cindy. This is Bill. We've been married almost 31 years. It'll be 31 years in July. We have 6 kids, 3 grown and married, 3 still at home. What else?
5 grandkids.
5 grandkids.
Right.
I'm a stay-at-home homeschooling mom, and Bill works for Raytheon. He's a program manager.
Awesome. 6 kids. Wow. You guys deserve a medal for that or something.
We're very tired.
Yeah, I bet you are. You're glad to get away just for a little bit, even if it's to a fake beach.
Yeah, definitely a fake beach, but it is lovely and one we have visited. So.
I like it. All right. Well, I'm going to start off with some easy questions, and then we'll get to a little bit deeper stuff. So, who's the better driver? And I mean driving, not golf.
Oh no.
Uh-oh, conflict already, huh?
We debate that. Yeah, we debate that.
Yeah, conflict already right off the bat.
That's right. Good.
I do think I'm a better driver. I'm more cautious. I'm a more defensive driver, I believe, than my spouse.
I would disagree.
Oh, good. Well, moving on. We'll go to the next one here. Who said I love you first?
Oh, it's actually a tricky question, because actually what happened was Cindy said, I think I'm falling in love with you. And first. And then I said, I love you. And then she said, I love you.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know. So you got to just, it's really
yeah.
Where is the actual statement lie?
Yeah. She introduced the idea and then you followed through.
Right.
So we'll say it that way. Who falls asleep first?
Definitely me.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
but please note that bedtime at our house is usually not till after midnight.
Okay, that's true.
Also true.
Also true. Okay. Who cooks better? Who's the best cook in the house?
Probably Bill.
Definitely. We take turns. I do big meals. I do all the big meals. And Cindy usually does kind of the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah, but he's the better cook. He does more creative, better things. I just keep us alive. That's about it.
Just the essentials. That's good. That is important to keep your family alive.
The bare minimum is my cooking strategy.
So when you guys do get to go out, whether it's fancy or not, where's kind of a favorite place or kind of a go-to for you two when you go out and eat? I know that's kind of rare right now, but where do you guys like to go?
Well, I think much like what I believe the Smith family likes, we're big Mexican food fans.
See,
So,
except in our home, we don't call it Mexican food. We just call it food. So just
food. There you go. There you go. Well, it doesn't matter which form it's in because it's all the same thing. You know, tortillas, bean, meat, cheese, whatever form it's in, it's good.
It's good. That's
Any
right.
restaurant almost.
Awesome. Who's more time conscious, more of the schedule keeper?
Ooh, that is definitely me.
Definitely Bill.
Okay.
I'm an
Is
ish
that-
person. And he's
Yeah.
very regulated.
I adhere to the Lombardi approach, which is if you're 10 minutes or if you're 5 minutes early or 10 minutes late.
Gotcha. Has that always been you, or is that more of
And
the
I feel like
military
you-
training?
No, well, that's always. I mean, I grew up in a military household too, so I mean that's
Okay.
been me my whole life.
Gotcha.
So.
What were you going to say, Cindy?
Well, I feel like if I'm in the parking lot at the designated time, like 11, if I'm in the parking lot, it counts. As
All right, you're-
opposed to his, arriving early,
Yeah.
etc. If I'm on the premises, it counts.
So there's another source of conflict I'm identifying right there too. So I see.
Yeah, we have a few.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into
So I think maybe the interview is turning into a counseling session.
That's
Is that
right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Please send in your comments to help the Masons. So,
Yes, please.
So how did you guys first, tell us a little bit, kind of a short version of how you guys first met and how did you know that, hey, this was the one?
Well, so I was in the Army, as you mentioned earlier. I was stationed at Fort Polk, Louisiana, which is just across the border in East Texas. And one of the guys in my unit, my infantry unit, was getting married to one of Cindy's friends. They were in school at Baylor. And so the guy in my unit had asked me to be one of the saber bearers. It was a military wedding. Asked me to be a saber bearer in the wedding. And Cindy's friend had asked her to be a candle lighter in the wedding. And so my friends and I and all the men in the wedding went up for the rehearsal. Well, everyone went for the rehearsal. And we were out front practicing the saber arch. And Cindy and her friends and the other girl who was the candle lighter were up practicing that. We walked, for whatever reason, I don't remember why, we walked into the men walked into the actual church. And I saw her standing at the altar practicing lighting the candles, wearing a red polka dot dress, and I told my friend, "That's the girl I'm going to marry." And then that night at dinner, we got seated together at Catfish Hut
Catfish Hut.
in
At the rehearsal.
in DeRidder, Louisiana,
Fancy.
and that was it. 3 months later, we were engaged, and 9 months later, we were married.
Wow. Very nice. So my next question was it love at first sight? But it sounded like it was for you, Bill. Cindy, how about you?
It was for me. I'm not sure Cindy had looked at me until after we got married, so I don't.
Okay.
Not quite true. I knew pretty early too. Not that early, but pretty early. Then a week or so.
Awesome. So thinking back to the beginning of marriage, was it easy in the beginning? Was it hard? Did you feel prepared? Talk about that just for a second.
Well, it was interesting at the beginning because Cindy was, she still had 2 years, a year of college left. And so we really, in that first year we were married, only saw each other on the weekends because I was, again, in Louisiana.
Wow.
And she was at Baylor. But I would say it was easy in the first couple of years. This is my opinion.
Yeah.
I would say it was easy, but for the perspective of, we didn't really deal with anything. Like we just kind of ignored if there were issues or disagreements. And we used to brag about the fact, I think it went maybe 5 or 6 years, we'd never had a fight, that kind of thing. And, but so, I mean, in my opinion, it was easy because of that, but it wasn't really, it wasn't really that easy, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I would have probably answered and said it was hard, but just because of what he described, we were constantly coming together and saying goodbye. And that was true the first year we were married while I was still at Baylor. Mm-hmm. And for a lot of years of our marriage because in the military for a long time, he was home 2 weeks, gone 2 weeks, home 2 weeks, gone 2 weeks, and then gone maybe 4 or 5 months at a time. So when we were together, we needed it to be happy and fun, and there were things we wanted to do and accomplish, and we were trying to do those things and have fun, and we didn't want conflict because he wants to fight when you only have 48 hours together,
right,
or 2 weeks or something. And so like he said, I think a lot of things that should have been dealt with weren't, which probably led to some frustration for both of us that we didn't acknowledge in those moments because they were few.
right. Well, that's interesting. And so being in the military, that's a different perspective from a lot of people. A lot of people know what that's like. A lot of people don't. But so the military, was that, I mean, it's going to sound like a dumb question or maybe an obvious question, but was being in the military, was that tough on the marriage?
Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of reasons it was. I mean, it was, Cindy certainly has a perspective because she was kind of a sole parent for a lot of the time. At the beginning, in the first half of my career in the military, I was, gone on deployments or training missions and those kinds of things. The last half, I had switched in the branch, and so I was just traveling, going to a lot of industry partners and stuff a lot of the time, but I was traveling all the time. So, but it kind of had the same effect either way. I mean, I just wasn't home a lot, I'll just say there was a lot of times when I wasn't home. So she had to deal with all the parenting things without me. So there was that perspective. From my perspective, I mean, I missed out on a lot of those parenting moments, whether it was good or bad. I just wasn't there for a lot of those things. And so that was difficult.
Right. Okay. Do you have any advice now that you've been married? What was it, 31 years or almost 31?
Almost
Yeah,
31.
Okay. What advice would you give to marriages, couples, when we're talking about in-laws? Just kind of talk about that for a second.
I would say we've been very blessed with I'll say with this, all 3 daughters who are married, their spouses are great young men, right? I mean, they're really good. And so we've been very blessed with that, and they're clearly products of their parents. And so their parents are great too. I would say, to the extent you can, jump in and correct me where I'm wrong, where you can be with them a lot, or if it's in a natural environment with both kids, I think that helps. I mean, and just naturally as a byproduct of where our kids are and where our in-laws are, we're with some more than others, and it's kind of just easier.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, you took that to be our kids' in-laws and extended family.
That's right.
And I took it to mean
Us as in-laws?
our
in-laws. Oh.
So
maybe that's what you mean.
That is kind of what I meant, but I'm glad you answered the other way too. But go ahead, Cindy.
Yeah. Well,
there's the biggest problem in our marriage is I have no idea what most people are talking about all the time.
I would say, as much as possible, try to extend some grace and understanding both ways, from the in-law to the new, to the couple, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
I know both sets of our parents really meant well all the time. And obviously those are 4 different personalities that came to bear on us and on our kids. And sometimes those situations did not necessarily feel so positive, but in saying that, I realize now that everybody always had our best in mind. And so I would just say, as you're maybe facing issues with each other's parents or trying to figure out how to navigate all that, to remember that really you're on the same team. There just may be different approaches
Right.
Because I know I sure appreciate his mom a lot more now. And she's been dead many, many years. But towards the end of her life, when I would say she sort of mellowed a little bit, I began to see and understand more of her heart that it had always been. Nothing had changed, but my perception of her changed a little. So I would say if you can make that transition earlier, that's better.
Yeah, and now that I understand the actual question, what I would also add is that I'll say this for the husbands or for the men, that just remember that the people that are your spouse's parents are the ones that brought her up to be the person you love, right? And so there's always, I mean, and very few times I can count probably on one hand the times I disagreed with something they thought or said. But having said that, there's always just a tremendous amount of respect for both her parent, for both Cindy's parents, just because, you know, she's such an awesome class act, and that clearly a lot of that her, but a lot of that is also them and their upbringing of her. So
Right.
I was very appreciative.
Good. Good. So if you don't mind, what is the conflict that kind of comes up the most in your marriage? If you don't mind sharing with that, 31 years of marriage, what's the one that kind of just keeps, it just won't go away, but it just keeps popping up?
So we didn't practice this.
Let's see how this
so
goes.
So what I'm going to say is that this item rears itself in manifests in a lot of different ways, and my opinion is that it's pride, right? And pride can manifest itself in I think I'm right, or Cindy thinks she's right, or this is what we ought to do now, or this is what we should do later, or that's the thing we shouldn't, or, I mean, there's lots of different ways it manifests itself. And I hesitate to speak for Cindy, but I'll say that I know that that's something that I deal with, because when I'm right, clearly I'm right. Or even if there's something that I'm thinking or a response I'm having to something she said, and I know the reasons I'm thinking, whatever I'm thinking, the way I'm responding, and it's not always intuitive to me. It's not always. I just assume that she understands those reasons or has those same feelings, which clearly she does not. So it's kind of that. I want to say maybe it's a line between pride and communication that result in certain things, but it's something I actively work at, which is trying to step back. And she'd probably say I don't do a very good job at that, but that's kind of my thought.
Good answer.
Well, actually, I feel like that was a really good answer. It's not what I would have said, but I agree with that. I would say, and again, this is more an area than a specific topic, but like he said, it sort of, spills into things, and that is communication styles. We have very different ways of communicating, and I think that we still haven't learned that. We still haven't learned each other's communication style, 31 years in, and I can say something sometimes with no ulterior motives or negative thoughts, but he perceives one, and vice versa. Or we may actually agree on the nuts and bolts of something, but we speak so differently and process things so differently that before we realize we're saying the same thing or that we are agreeing fundamentally, there's conflict. So communication and pride.
Other than that, it's all good. What I'd say is on, and we're very, people struggle, I think, a lot to try to be alike or to think the same way. And I think, clearly there could be benefits to that, but I also think that one of the reasons we're drawn to each other is because we're different and because we see things differently and approach things differently. And I think our children benefit from that. And there's a negative side and a positive side, right? That on the positive side, they benefit from that because and I'll just use one very simple example. I mean, Cindy is the safety person. Like, let's be safe. And I'm like, nothing's ever going to happen to anybody ever. So if it was up to me, probably everybody in the world besides me would be dead, right? I mean, they'd all just die.
That's right.
And if they were all Cindy, we'd all live in a bubble inside a little, plastic shield. And so we kind of moderate each other in that context.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. And, and I kind of believe in that theory of gifts and gaps and things. I think that is applicable. But those gifts and gaps can cause conflict sometimes.
That's good. And I think too, just knowing you guys, there may be disagreements, but you agree on the main things, right? Is the foundation being God.
Very
and
clearly.
That's what your relationship is on. And that's how you do your whole life. And I think for a lot of marriages, as long as you agree on the big things, then the rest of the stuff, it'll work itself out.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true. We do have those kind of discussions. What's the important thing here?
Good. So talk about marriage and raising kids. What are the lessons that you've learned, or you would maybe, I could rephrase it this way and say, what would you go back and tell yourself real quick about marriage if before you started having your 6 kids, just to say, hey, you guys need to watch out for this, or think about this, or be ready for this?
Well, first I'd tell myself, learn how to add, because 6 is a lot. But yeah, it's great. But it's funny because the story, and we've told this before, which is when we were walking out of the hospital with Brittany, our oldest, we were just astounded they were letting us leave with her. We're like, they're really letting us, like, we have no idea.
Yeah, me too.
Surely somebody's going to stop us and make this go. But no, the old thing is true. I mean, we were literally, when I say by the book, I do mean by the book, literally had a book out reading, how do you give a bath? You do this, and of course now by the 6th child, we're like, oh, they're eating dirt. Great. that goes with carrots.
That's right. It builds immunity.
That's right. But I don't know that. I guess in general, kind of back to your previous point about the big things being the big things. We agreed certain fundamental things. When the church doors are open, we want the kids there. Whether it's worship or youth group or whatever. And, we want them to be around a set of peers that have the same fundamental beliefs that they do. We want to be involved. We want to know who their friends are and make sure that we're aware of those kinds of things, and try to do so in such a manner, though, that doesn't make them feel confined, because we want them to have some freedom and choice. And Cindy probably talked about this. Our first 3, we were public school, and the last 3 we homeschooled, and so there's some differences in approaches there. I don't know. You talk about any of that?
I don't know. I was going to say, the question, what would I say to myself then, or what do I wish people would know, or what advice I'd give specific to marriage? The thing that I made sure to tell my girls as they got married is that, everybody thinks they're going to ride off into the sunset and it's all going to be perfect. And I think for the vast majority of people, if they're really honest, not every minute's perfect. And the thing I would want younger people to know is that's okay. And it's to be expected. And life is going to come up and smack you, probably. I mean, there are probably a few that it misses. And, that's phenomenal for them. But marriage is good, but that doesn't mean sometimes it isn't hard.
Right.
And that's okay. It's what you do about it or how you approach it, and realizing that you've not only made a promise to your spouse, but for us, and probably for everybody listening, it's also a promise before the God of the universe. And that's a pretty big thing. So I would say, sorry, Terry.
No,
so
it's okay.
It's okay if it's hard sometimes. You just have to love each other through it and remember who you've made promises to. And it is each other and God. And then about parenting, I would say, this will make me cry even more. Babies grow up really fast. And not everything is a big deal. So again, it's okay to let some things go, because most things are really not that big of a deal. If it's not going to matter in a year, it doesn't really matter. You know, and I think especially with our first three, and especially doing it kind of on my own a lot of the time, I got hung up on a lot of little things. And I would say relax and enjoy your kids and don't worry about those things.
That's awesome.
And relax and enjoy each other too.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. You know, you talk about how marriage can be hard or it takes work. And one guy that I read a lot, he says the difference between the masters and the disasters are how they handle conflict and how they do it. Because everyone's going to go through their stuff, right? Everyone's going to have their mess. And the difference between succeeding and failing is how you deal with the conflict. So that's awesome. And
go
ahead.
I read a book I cannot remember the author. It wasn't Gary Smalley, but it was a book like that, or like one of his books. I think it was called Rocking the Rolls. I don't remember for sure. Anyway, along those lines in conflict and love, he said, successful couples approach love from a 0-100 perspective, not a 50-50 perspective. It's not, you don't give 50 and expect 50. You give everything and the other person gives everything. And if they don't give it, it doesn't matter. You give everything and they give everything. And there are certainly times when, there are times when you're at the point at, one of the, like the valley of the hill or the hill, the valley kind of things you go through that where you think, man, I'm getting nothing. And then it's just essentially it's a conscious decision. I've made an oath, I've made a vow, this is what I'm going to do. And then there are times when it is just euphoria, and it's great and everything's wonderful and that's great. And but like Cindy said, that the hills aren't permanent and the valleys aren't permanent. And I mean, it's a lifetime of just the relationship.
Wow, that's good. So I was going to say the last question here is just talk for a second. You both kind of already mentioned this, but how has your faith in God impacted your marriage?
Okay.
Well, I'll probably cry again because I do that. But anybody who knows me and is watching will not be surprised by that. But really, I think I sort of already said it. I think, well, and like Bill said, we knew as we started raising our family that we wanted to make sure they all knew Jesus and loved Jesus, and we wanted them raised in the church. And so we've made sure that's where they've been and that they've had that influence. And I think, when times are great and easy, that not as much as we should have probably, but we've tried anyway to acknowledge that and be thankful in those moments. And when things have been harder, I think that sometimes even if we've not necessarily wanted or been prone on our own to do the right thing or to, whatever, maybe sometimes when we haven't even necessarily wanted to fight for each other because we're tired, that the knowledge that it's not just us, that we belong to each other, we belong to God. Our marriage is ours, but it's His too. Our family is ours, but it's His too. Has given us a reason and more incentive maybe than we would have had individually to persevere through harder times. And, and then again, then when things are great, it's awesome to try to remember and acknowledge and be thankful for that and thankful to God for that.
I think we've always tried, really for as long as I can remember now, which these days my memory is getting shorter and shorter, but always tried to make sure that whatever the occasion is, whatever the event is, whatever's going on, that we're acknowledging the blessings that we have from God, that what we're able to do, what we're able to experience, what we're able to give, to share is nothing about us, right? I mean, we've been very, I think it was Jeff Humphrey who said, we live in this freakish utopia of Allen, right? Which is which is not the real world. And
right.
And I think it's important while we're here, it's important that currently our stage of life, just to recognize and realize and communicate frequently how blessed we are, and to not ignore that. And so we try to do that with our kids and our family as well, and make sure that they know how we feel. They know the way we approach life, how we think about things in relationship to God. And so we've kind of talked about our marriage and our relationship.
Right. Well, I appreciate you guys so much for jumping on here and doing this with me. And I know the people that are going to watch this will definitely benefit from it. So thanks to both of you for taking some time to share and open the door and let us into your marriage a little bit and see what Bill and Cindy are all about. Yes, there you go.
Yeah, sorry for the tears, but they happen.
That's right. I appreciate you guys.